This lecture has been made available to you courtesy of the American Numismatic Society.
Let me say a few words about this scholar. Euan is chargé d'études et de recherche within the domain Histoire de l'art antique et de l'archéologie at the Institut National d'Histoire de l'Art in Paris. He has worked in many archaeological sites in France and Italy. And now his main research line is focused on miniature votive offerings in Italian sanctuaries. So his research is focused on the ancient Italian archaeology, but today he will be sharing with us his research on the coinage of Copia, according to or after the Wyszynki collections. So I now give the floor to Mr. Wall. Please go ahead.
Yes, hello, thank you very much. Before starting, I would like to give a heartfelt thanks to the organizers of today's conference for the invitation to speak in such exalted company. And especially, of course, Lucia, who I worked with when I was in Colombia 3 years ago now, and who had the kindness to invite me back to tell you about the research I conducted when I was in New York. So let me just share my screen here with my PowerPoint presentation. Start my timer so I try not to overrun too much. And so yes, again, thank you for having me, and congratulations on organizing a colloquium during the pandemic, which is not easy. So while I was an exchange student at Columbia and following the seminar on Roman coins and history, which took place at the ENS, Lucia, who knew that I was working on Italian archaeology, asked if I would like to study a group of 94 coins in the Wyszynki collection, which belong to the coinage of Copia Turi. So here are the coins here, the obverses and the reverse of all the denominations. Sorry. So Copia Turi was a Latin colony founded in 194-193 BCE on the site of Turi, which of course was itself founded on the site of Sybaris, the archaic city. Now this coinage was studied, as already had a monographical study published by Teresa Caruso in 1984. And at the time she had knowledge of 97 coins, which represented 12 types. Several more coins were unearthed at Castiglione di Paludi, which was excavated in the 1980s and 1990s, and I believe some people on this panel were involved with that excavation. 51 coins, if I'm not mistaken, were discovered there. Several new types were found, but that means that the 94 Wyszynki coins add a whole 65% known coins to this coinage, and bring the total number of Copia coins known, shall we say, to science to 242, which fit into 32 types. So this collection, which is important, means we can now shed new light on the organization, perhaps the purpose of this coinage, and also a question which comes up quite often in the bibliography about it, the date, that when it started and when it finished. And these subjects can fit into research which is ongoing about the site of Copia, which is currently being excavated. So just to sort of look ahead to what we're going to talk about, I thought first I'd tell you about the historical context of the foundation of Copia. Second, we'll have a look at the coinage, of course, its iconography, its metrology and the types, and as Lucia mentioned earlier, the magistrates that we can see in the different initials on these coins. And thirdly, we'll ask some questions about the function and the date of this coinage. So to start with the colony, Copia itself. So Copia is a Latin colony, as I said, in the Tarentine Gulf. It was established in 194, 193 BCE, in the aftermath of the Second Punic War, which of course ended several years beforehand. So Turi had not defected to the Carthaginians after the 216 Battle of Cannae. It had stayed with Rome, allied to Rome, but that only meant that it was captured by the Carthaginians in 212. So Turi, according to our historical sources, stayed in Carthaginian hands from 212 to 204. And it was in 204 that Hannibal fell back to Croton with, we're told, 3,500 citizens of the city who were friendly to him, and left his troops to sack the city. Thereafter, Strabo and Livy tell us a bit about the foundation of the colony. But you see, their accounts don't exactly fit very well together, because Strabo doesn't mention the Punic War at all. And neither does Livy, who doesn't tell us the name Copia. He mentions that there's a Latin colony to be established in the territory of Turi. He tells us the names of the triumvirs and that it was decided by the Senate. But later on, in the next book, he says that the colony was established at a place called Castrum Frentinum, which is a hapax. It's not a name which is known in any other context, either in the literary sources or in epigraphy. So this was for a long time a problem, since Strabo was the only person to talk about Copia, and indeed some later literary sources talk about Turi again, notably Caesar, when he talks of the place in his civil wars. And the conventional name Copia Turi comes from Mumsen's reading of an inscription, CIL 10-125. You see here C Tur, which he reads as Copia Turi. But this question of whether Copia is Turi has sort of been put to rest now, because since the 1960s, excavations have shown that there are 3 levels to the archaeological site: a Roman one, a classical Hellenistic one, and an archaic one. And has also been unearthed an inscription showing that in Julio-Claudian times, the inhabitants of this archaeological site were known as Copienses. So that's what I'm showing here. So we now know that Copia was indeed founded on the site of Turi as part of a wave of colonization aiming at providing devastated areas with settlers after, the terrible war, ensuring the surveillance of regions which were still quite rebellious and not very well controlled by the Roman state, and reinforcing strategic zones. Copia was founded at the same time as a sister colony, Vibo Valentia, which was on the site of Hipponion, and they were both given confident names which sort of signaled the Roman intention for them to become places of real consequence, Copia and Vibo Valentia. But they had, according to Livy, difficulties in recruiting, probably linked to both the hard living conditions and the difficulty of the mission, which was to be entrusted to these colonists by Rome. So we're told a very small number of people actually came to live in Copia. And it's also thought that these cavalrymen, these equites, were probably served as an administrative class. And perhaps it's them that we can see in the coinage of Copia. So as you can see, the coinage, in fact, is our main historical source for the life of this Latin colony, which is very little mentioned, if at all, after Livy telling us about its foundation. So this brings us to my discussion of the coins themselves. So it's a bronze coinage, of course. I forgot to mention this, I think, but it's the copia only minted in bronze. And they issued coinage in 5 denominations that follow the Roman denominational model of the time. So as, semis, triens, quadrans, and sextans. And all of these coins follow the same obverse types as Rome, except for the semis. So we've got our Janus bifrons with a bar on the as, our head of Minerva with 4 pellets on the triens, Hercules with his lion skin, and 3 pellets on the quadrants, and Mercury with 2 pellets on the sextants. But the semis is different. As you can see, we've got our female figure with a sort of hair in a bun at the neck, a veil, and a cylindrical attribute on her forehead. So in 1984, Teresa Caruso proposed that this figure was either a personification of Copia or the goddess Demeter with a modius on her forehead. And the good conservation of the Wachonki coins means that we can sort of have a closer look at these ideas, these propositions. So these are 2 particularly well-preserved coins, semis coins from the collection, where we can have a good look at the, the item that's on this female character's head. And what it seems to me, at least, is that maybe both are true, because the item definitely looks cylindrical in this left-hand picture here. So it does look more like a modius, but on the right, we can definitely see the sort of crenellated design of a turreted crown, which would indicate that we have here represented Tuque as the personification of a city. So in some senses, the question remains open. We've both got Demeter and a personification of Copia, or the Tuque of Copia. So is this a syncretistic deity, or does it mean that different artists could represent her with different attributes, with the fundamental meaning remaining the same? But in either case, either Demeter or a personification of Copia, the link of the obverse with the reverse is direct. We've got the goddess of abundance with a symbol of abundance. So as I was saying earlier, the reverse of the coins is the same for all denominations. It's always a cornucopia with the name Copia. So the name Copia is usually written as it is here, to the left in a clockwise, anti-clockwise, direction, but it can also appear to the left, on the left side, or in a clockwise direction. So, of course, I think we have to bear in mind the symbolism of the symbol of the cornucopia, a symbol of abundance. The land of Turi had always been renowned for its fertility, and so this piece of iconography has, and I think convincingly, been interpreted as a way of promoting the new colony, of trying to get people to come to it. As we have seen, that was quite a difficult thing to do, apparently. And it's probably not a coincidence at all that the cornucopia also appears on the coins of Copia's sister colony, Vibo Valentia. Now, another thing that interested me when I had a look at this coin was the open P on the Copia coin. Now, this was perhaps a bit of a naive question at the time when I studied these coins. This open P is an archaic form of the Latin P. It's quite common on coins. I perhaps didn't know this, but the pi that is formed by the way that the bar goes all the way down to the baseline seems to me to be a bit rarer and more unusual, since Latin colonies, when they moved from Greek domination, when they used to be Greek colonies, to Latin colonies, became vectors of Romanization and used the Latin alphabet. So does this perhaps indicate a residual Greek element in the artist who produced this coinage? because Turi itself struck coinage right until the beginning of the Punic War. So maybe some artists were carried over from that, and sort of their handwriting, as it were, or their style of writing letters stayed in the new coinage. So maybe that indicates that some artists were carried over. To have a look at some metrology, some weights. The coinage was minted on reduced semantial to semantial standard, with an average as equivalent of 9.57 grams, which is quite light. But the weight was very variable. As you can see, the as equivalent weight of these coins goes from 3.6 grams for a sextans all the way to 17.8 grams for 1 triens. And this very variable weight for the coins indicated, according to Caruso, the highly fiduciary nature of the coinage, which was sort of very, anyway, fiduciary nature of the coinage. So the new data in the Wichonki coins reinforces this idea. Shows that she was right. I think this is an idea that will come up quite often, was that Caruso was right about a few things in her study of this coinage. And another thing we can notice on this graph here is that there are no outlying groups. There are no coins which were struck to a different standard. So it appears that there was no change of the standard during the production of this coinage, which was just rather haphazardly struck at 9 to 10 grams to the as. So this is quite low compared to Rome, which was semantial only during the Second Punic War and which went up afterwards, but it is quite similar to the standard which was used at Vibo Valentia, which was 9 to 14 grams to the as, and also to Paestum. So Copia sort of fits into a southern Italian picture where a much lower standard than that of Rome was accepted for bronze coinage in the first half of the 2nd century, probably for everyday transactions in very circumscribed areas. And this is still probably the case. This is what Caruso thought. No reason to say that's wrong, but the large number of new types justifies a new look at the size and the length of the coinage, which was formerly underestimated. So Caruso divided the coinage into 20 types. 20 types which were distinguished by control marks and mint marks on the reverse. And you see what we have here are, we've got some anonymous issues, some issues with symbols, some issues with initials, some with initials and symbols, and some with initials and 2 symbols. So the colors here, the black ones are the ones which Caruso knew. The blue ones are the new coins from the Castiglione excavations, and the red ones are the new types and new coins from the Wichonki collection. So you see we have added quite a few here. So we now have 32, and we also have some new denominations for previously known types. So this is where we get to our magistrates that we were talking about earlier. Caruso read the initials of the names as indications of magistratures. So most notably, in fact, there's the LL Aid coins, which she interpreted as showing that they were minted by an aedile, or the several types which end in Q, which for her stands for Questor. Now, the coin that she had as an example to show that this Q probably was symbolizing a magistrature was this one, this LLMPL, and then on the next line, Q coin with a wheat ear. And so she said that since the Q was on a different line to the other letters, it probably had a different meaning, and so was not onomastic, but the abbreviation of a magistrature. Now, we have now another type which reinforces this idea, which is the VQPA-Q coin in the Wichonki collection. And so we can assume that this dash before the Q has the same function as what we might call the line return on the other type, on the type which Caruso already knew. So this is quite interesting. So it shows that probably there were some magistrates involved in this, either Roman or, I tend to think, magistrates, locally who used Roman titles. What's also quite interesting is that if we do assume that these letters at the end of the names are, in fact, magistratures, then we can follow perhaps some people. So this LL here features both on the LL Aid coins, but also on some LLQ coins. And we find the same group of letters on the LLM, LLQ plus wheat ear coins. So have we here followed this LL person from his post as an aedile to his post as a questor? Now, if we have a look now at this LLM, who accompanies LLQ on the Wichonki 743 coin, we find them again as well. So this is the same coin, and they're again on LLM PLQ plus wheat ear, which we mentioned earlier. So we've got our LL person, our LLM, who apparently is also on several coins. So we can maybe think that this is evidence that there were two-person colleges. Maybe several people in a college would mint coins together. And also, if we've, for example, got LLM here and here, that some moneyers could mint as part of several different colleges over time. For all that, all the Qs cannot stand, of course, for the magistrature of Questor. If we look, for example, at this type here, CQ, CCQQ plus winged animal, they can't all mean the same thing. We've probably got some praenomina, in there somewhere. And altogether, we've actually got a lot of types that are actually quite difficult to understand. And one thing that particularly struck me was the way that a lot of them seem to be anagrams or near anagrams of each other. For example, CCCCPQ or CCCPCQ. And so I wondered whether the link between all these names was in the symbols. So if we look, for example, at the wheat ear, which we talked about earlier, is on LLM LLQ, LLM PLQ, LL AID, so a link there with LL perhaps. But the wheat ear is also in LCQ. So is it perhaps a family symbol? Do they link people of different families? Because other symbols are also closely associated with these similar groups of initials. For example, the 8-pointed star, which is present on 4Cs PQ, on 3Cs PCQ, on CC PCQ. So these are, very resemblant names. And also staff and palm branch, which is on MCCLM, MCM, CLQ, CMC, LQ. So perhaps these anagrams are members of the same family. There does definitely here seem to be a tantalizing logic that is quite difficult to grasp, and I personally have not fully grasped. So I'm completely open to any suggestions about what all this refers to. What's quite difficult also is that there are I could not locate any obverse die links between issues to sort of establish a relative chronology. But what is clear is that some issues were quite large. I'd say that in a relative sense. I don't know exactly how large they were. But if we look at, for example, these LLAID quadrantes, they were struck with at least 2 dies. And this is interesting because Caruso thought that these LLAID issues were circumstantial issues, which she placed at the end of the chronology of the coins. She did this because they only exist in quadrants and sextants denominations, and the L is more open than on other types. But the Wichonki coins mean that we must reevaluate these opinions, partly because now the LLAID coins are not the only ones which were only minted as quadrans and sextants. You can see here that spearhead coins and QLC coins were both minted with only those denominations. And in fact, now we have a more complete picture of the coinage. We can see that only 3 issues were, we could call, complete, or at least with all these, with all the coins. So that's the anonymous, the caduceus, and the LCQ coins. So we only had a few complete issues, and others seem to top up maybe when necessary. The as equivalent by type doesn't seem to tell B very much either, because all these identifiable types are squarely in the middle of it all. Here's anonymous here, there's caduceus there, there's LLAID here. But of course, if LL is the same person, as I suggested earlier, in all of these different types, the AID would probably come afterwards, because he would have been an aedile after being a questor. But they're probably not at the end of the coinage, because LLAID coins are attested at Castiglione di Paludi. And this is quite a difficult question, because the pottery of Castiglione di Paludi suggests an abandonment of the settlement at the end of the 3rd century, is what I believe I read. So we can maybe push this forward into the beginning of the 2nd century. But in any case, the LLAID must be at the beginning of the coins of Copia. And since we now have 32 types, we can sort of cram all of them into too short a time, into only a few years. So maybe LLAID is not at the end, as Caruso thought. So this brings us to the question of the date, since it's been suggested that the Copia coinage actually predates the foundation of the colony in 194-193. Maurizio Canata noted for Hipponion, so this is Vibo Valencia, there was a political proximity with Rome of that city, the fact that it struck to a semantial standard. So he suggested that the Vibo Valencia coinage actually started before 194, before the foundation of the colonies, and so maybe Copia's did as well. He's not alone in this. They said the authors who bring this up often suggest that this was a coinage to pay soldiers during the war. And we also have 2 interesting pieces of data here. We've got the Castiglione di Paludi coins, which suggests that there was already a circulation around this time, and a hoard of 3rd century Paestum coins, late 3rd century, which Copia coin was found in. So we have some indications that perhaps the coinage was circulating before 194. On the other hand, I originally thought that this was quite unlikely because of the consistent administrative basis of the Copia coins. As we saw, there were evidence that Questors struck money, and so did aediles. Now, these were magistrates who could mint at Rome, but usually didn't, whereas a smaller city like Copia would have no need to delegate to lower magistrates like Triumviri Monetalis. This is why originally I thought that that the consistent administrative basis sort of suggested that this coinage could only post-date the foundation. But of course, we could have two ways of solving this issue. Either all the anonymous issues are before 194 and the others are afterwards, or this money was struck by Roman magistrates who were in the south of Italy, minting in the south of Italy before foundation of the colony. So I'll leave that to people who know more about this than I do to suggest answers to this. So maybe we had a sort of transitional phase before the actual founding of the colony. In any case, the 32 types we now know argue for a rather longer duration than was once thought for this coinage. In terms of looking for a terminus antiquem, we have the Castel Sant'Angelo hoard from the mid-2nd century, where a Copia coin was found. So this suggests that we probably have a coinage which dates securely to the first half of the 2nd century BCE. If, for example, we assume perhaps completely arbitrarily that there was one issue a year, we go from 194 to 160 circa, which is coherent with dates that have already been suggested. And so that's why I represent here the possible chronological extension of the Copia coinage, maybe starting before 194. It doesn't seem to me likely that any minting was done before the city was abandoned by the Carthaginians, before it was not in Carthaginian hands. Anyway, most data still associates Copia coinage with early context. So many coins are probably minted a large amount in the early years of the coinage. Probably, again, for geographically limited distribution for everyday spending. We know that in Castiglione, this was not the main circulating money of the settlement. It was found in a single house. The Copia coins were found in a single hoard in a single house. So this was probably just a local fiduciary coinage, even though Crawford does suggest it was used to pay for ships in the context of the defense of the area, as I said earlier. But what is clear, I think, is also the strong ideological nature of the coinage, which was minted to a Roman design in a Latin colony, which were vectors of Romanization in hostile areas. And the coinage also emphasizes this Romanness through its iconography, and it also advertises the attractiveness and promise of this new colony through the name of the colony and the symbol of the cornucopia for plenty. So the coinage emphasizes the might of Rome, the power of Rome in a part of Italy which was still quite dangerous for it at the time, and promises prosperity to those who embrace it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for this attractive lecture. For me, it has been very interesting since, well, I read your paper previously, of course, well, and I enjoy very much. And I enjoy very much because this is a mint that has many parallels with the colony of Valencia, but just Valencia, not Vivo Valencia, just Valencia in Hispania. The Colonia Valencia in Hispania was founded in 138, and the reverse of all coins has the cornucopia in all denominations, and has another similarity, is that the magistrates are questors. So there are three couples of questors. So the questors were the magistrates who control the production of the coins. And they appear with not just nomen and cognomen, but also the filiation. So they say almost the three anomina, but not always. So the first, I recommend to have a look to this mint, because the settlers, the veterans, were veterans of the Roman army, and they come from the south of Italy. So from Campania, Bruttium, Lucania, and many parts of the south, because it's a colony founded by Junius Brutus. So I enjoy very much your your paper, your conference, and I enjoy very much these coins too. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And there is questions?
Annalisa would like to add something, Annalisa Bolosa, since she's the one who studied at Castiglione di Paludi.
Yes, I was.
Yes. Hi, hello to everybody. Yes, I just wanted to say something first about Castiglione di Paludi. Of course, it's lectio facilior to say that at the end of the Second Punic War, Castiglione di Paludi was destroyed, and actually, according to the chronology of ceramic materials, that date is broadly accepted. I mean that we find the black figure of the 3rd century. We don't find the gray ware of the 2nd century, but a small extension of Castiglione di Paludi has been excavated, and I am not sure that the destruction was total. I mean, it's quite possible that at the end of the Second Punic War, Castiglione di Paludi suffered because of the military activities of the Romans. But I don't think that the site was completely destroyed like Carthage at the end of the last Punic War. So I would not say that the fact that copia coins found in Castiglione di Paludi should oblige us to predate the striking of coinage in the name of copia before the decision to found the colony and to name it Copia, because before Copia there was another city that was maybe surviving in some way in Turi, and maybe significantly we have some series of bronze coinage of Turi that bear the cornucopia on the reverse. So there could be a sort of continuity between the last phase of the Greek town and the beginning of the colony. In my advice, as those coinages are, to me, the expression of the new administrative status of the city, maybe first comes the foundation and immediately after comes the striking of coins in the new name. Another thing that I wanted to say is that the number of specimens in Wichonki collection is amazing. Up to now, there were like 3 main places where these coins were found. One was the older collection studied by Teresa Caruso. The other one was Castiglione di Paludi, and then there were the coin finds from Sybaris, from Torre Mordillo, and other sites in the surroundings of the city. But the fact that Wichonki was able to purchase something like 100 of those coins should suggest that maybe there were quantities of these coins that we do not know where how they finished. They are disappeared, and they could come back by chance, maybe in a hoard or from new excavations in Sybaris or elsewhere there around. So before we can reconstruct the whole system of copia issues, we should keep in mind that the frame could change dramatically through new finds. I don't know if you agree, Euan.
Yes, of course. Well, I did think about this, of course. The fact that he managed to buy so many means that maybe there were a lot more dispersed than there were. It's interesting also, your input on the excavations at Castiglione and the fact that it wasn't necessarily totally destroyed. I didn't completely accept this idea that that the coinage predated the colony. It didn't seem to make sense to me, but it was something which had been suggested, by several scholars, and the fact that the way I understood the Castiglione data meant that it had to predate 194. I had to sort of accept that this was possible, but I totally agree with you that for me it shows the the new status of the city, and so the foundation must have come first. So yes, that's I agree with you with that, and yes, there probably were maybe some more places where it was found. I don't know, Lucia, whether we know how these coins came into Rick's possession, or
Susan?
I think Lucia is talking.
Unmute you, Lucia, please. Unmute Lucia.
Sorry, yes, sorry for this. As far as I know, they came mostly through private auctions, but I can check. I can check better. I mean, of course, all of these, but yes, through private auctions, which is, as Annalisa was suggesting, very important. But I don't want to steal, because I see that Clive and Suzanne are actually ready to, I guess, ask a question. Yeah. So I don't want to steal the floor for something that promised to be interesting. Okay.
So Suzanne.
For my side, it's totally interesting, but I have 5 coins of Copia in the Lily database, which are sent to Euan.
Thank you very much.
5 of them reached the Lily, and I assume they were coming up the Via Appia. The stuff coming out of the Lily dates from the foundation of the city, basically right into early imperial times.
Okay.
That's all.
Great, thank you very much. So in fact, there were even more than we thought, in fact.
Yeah, I just checked my database. I haven't actually looked at the pieces. I'll send you the information probably tonight.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wanted also ask if you have from Oppidoma Mertina, there are certainly also some in the excavations. Okay. I can check for you. But then also I thought if, and I think this makes sense probably, if they start only with the foundation of the colony, and if this was 193, and coins signed by Questors, they are around the weight standard of 9 grams, also with fluctuations. It's not unsimilar to what I see in Sicily with also, I dated them independently to maybe 190, 80. And there, of course, the Questors are different because they are the only available administrative staff in a province with the pro-praetor or the praetor. So these are the only available magistrates. But then I think in your case, to explore these magistracies is really interesting. And if it's Questors, it's yearly magistrates. As in my case, and I could easily calculate them, it's but then also the parallel is that they start with anonymous. Well, in my case, I'm sure really they start with the anonymous one. They have this strange Macedonian iconography. And if you are able to assemble these data, it's really interesting. And then also the square P, you have seen the magistrate Porcius has it. So this is really something they carry over. And Porcius is still, I would say, rather at the start of my phase. So I don't date them by year. It would be wrong, you know, for these bronze coins, we can really just say this and this destiny, but I would say they are still in the 90s, 80s. This for the links. And I don't know mine what denominations they are. I'm very careful. I wouldn't call them asses, although they look like asses. These are, you know, local denominations.
Mm.
Yeah.
And we can just try to understand the structure. And well, you are in southern Italy, but even there, are these asses, emissis, etc. Well, I don't know, but possibly.
Yes. So you say you wouldn't think yearly. I don't necessarily think that they sort of there was a yearly issue. I sort of took a year as a sort of benchmark to think about how long, you know, the coinage could have lasted. That's why I said a year. I wasn't, you know, necessarily affirming the fact that they struck one issue a year. But it
no,
is
here for mine, you know, they are
yeah.
they are associated with names. Then it's clear it's a yearly magistracy. But if they are not with names, then you are in the dark.
Yes. And of course, also as in your case, these questors, they could also be, you know, Romans. They don't have to be, as you say, necessarily the ones. They don't have to be the questors of Copia. They could also be questors from Rome, who are sort of governing there in some way.
Yes, you know, the magistracies, they are known. So there are some, they are sent to the provinces, but you are not in a province.
No.
So then it's not, they do not send questors to Italy.
No.
Okay.
Can I also add something? Yes, thank you very much. And I want to thank everyone for this presentation also. It was so interesting. And I can say that also a few coins from Copia in Pestum Museum. So if you're interested, I can send you the data.
Yeah,
and there are a few coins, but there are some. And also I have to say that it was so interesting, the graph that you show about weights. And I can see that it would be so interesting. So if you, with the number of coins that you have right now, to show if there are any stable local reductions, some stable local adjustment to the weight standard, because it's what we can see in Pestum. So it would be very nice to see if the same also occur in Copia. I can see that what I see is that the trillions is heavier in Copia than in Pestum, the same chronology. So it sounds quite strange. And maybe there is something to check about weights, and also if there are any interruption minting, and if there are some local adjustment. Maybe this is a point that is possible now to see with this new corpus that we are building. And another point is about the Pestum hoard. So it's quite strange, the chronology of this hoard, like I show. So maybe something to check, and we will. I think that it's now necessary to check again the chronology of this hoard, because maybe this will help you in identifying where is the period of starting of this coinage, and at least which is the chronology of this hoard will help you a lot, I think.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'll get in touch. I'll have a look at what exactly coins were in the hoard in Pestum, and check the dates of that, because it's true. This date thing. I mean, I'm sort of arguing against what my gut tells me, which is that I can't believe that it's before 194. But I mean, some people have said that it was, and there seems to be some data suggesting that it was. So I sort of had to look into it. But
yes, maybe your data will be better to date the hoard, not the contrary, you know. And also talking about the letter P that you told that Lucia was wondering, it was similar to the one of Pestum. It is made, you know, if you show the letter P. Yes, it's quite strange. It's right. It's quite strange. But I have to say that it can depend also on the engraver, because, you know, we know that sometimes they are not very skilled as we expect. So it depends on the hands. So maybe with this new corpus that you have, you can also try to distinguish the hands of the engravers. It will be interesting if you can, of course.
Yes, I would. Yes, it's also something to look at. It did seem to me that the sort of idiosyncratic way of writing the letters does point to the sort of individuals behind the coins, and that's quite interesting, and it's quite nice, especially for bronze coinage, which is usually, you know, a bit more rough.
Well, I had a question. Is why do you think edility had more rank than the questura? And I saw that you apply the cursus honorum senatorial.
Yes, well, that's the reason why, and I may be completely wrong.
And in the epigraphy in many cities, there is the edil, dumbir, Questor. I mean, that I think that is not correct to apply the cursus honorum senatorial to a colonial magistracies, because in the epigraphy, questors are people that had already the office of edil and dumbir, because they are people of trust people, that they are dealing with money. So this is a magistracy for people that had experience in managing the city. So it's possible that to put the LL8 at the beginning is more correct than at the end.
Okay, well,
I mean that LL edil is previous, if it's the same person, the same LL8 before LLQ.
Yes.
This is my point of view. This is not, we don't compare these two cursus honorum. Yes.
I'll just be honest, I didn't know that. So yes, I will. You are definitely right about that. So I'll change that in the final
have a look. Yeah. Susan?
Yeah, I just wanted to support this. I would really be surprised if Rome, what would do wrong there? I think it's really, you can be confident and think in the local terms. So this would be local magistrates in Italy. So again, you know, it's so different in the provinces because they send a magistrate, but they would not bother really, you know, then we would have questors everywhere in southern Italy. But this was the city's organization, I would think, as well. And then you can invert, and it makes all sense.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Okay, yes, the chronology needs to be inverted there. So the aids come before But of course that still does reinforce, because we you know the position of Teresa Caruso was that that these came right at the end. These were the very last coins. So I think we're probably in a good position now to move them up in the chronology then.
Just if it's the same.
If it's the same person. If it's the same person, of course, yes.
If I can, I would ask you another thing I forgot before. How frequently do we find ticche on southern Italy coinages?
I don't know.
This is my mistake because I don't remember. But now I have the habit to see it in Eastern Mediterranean. But in southern Italy, is it frequent to find such an iconography for the city, turreted veiled head?
It's if I could just jump in, it's I think it's unusual, and it ends up with, we have the debates over the turreted female head who appears at both Capua and Rome in the Second Punic War, and whether it's a tuque or whether it's Cybele or whether it's a personification of the city. I think there's much work left to be done in this area, and it is unusual.
But in Spain, the tique is used in Cartella. It's a Roman colony founded in 171, but only at the end in the 1st century BC, quite late. But it appeared.
And another
complete.
small, sorry, Paola. A small comment. There's a local coinage at Minturnae, which I'll show tomorrow, that uses the cornucopia. It's one of the largest local coinages at Minturnae, and it's quadrants, I think.
I think Marta Barbado wanted to say something. If Emma can unmute her, that would be great. Sorry.
No.
He is permitted to talk? Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Now, I just wanted to, hello everybody. I just wanted to comment that the tique type is not so common in the Southern Italy coinage, especially bronze coinage at this point, as we are discussing about quite late autonomous coinage for Southern Italy, which stopped at the end of the 3rd century in most of the cities, except Paestum, Copia, and really a few others, or as far as I can remember now. So I just wanted to point out this and answering to Professor Proza's question.
Thank you, Marta.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the American Numismatic Society's YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like our online resources, publication, and events, you can support the Society by becoming a member. And don't forget to check out our book and eBay stores. The links are below.